Hello, welcome back to Pop Culture Graveyard. I am Hollis, and today I want to talk a little bit about the Lou Reed album, Transformer. It's not my favorite Lou Reed album, that's The Blue Mask, and it's not his most accomplished album, that's probably New York. But Transformer is far and away his most legendary album. It turned him from a New York cult figure into a glam superstar, and it's the main album his solo career will be remembered by. And it's the perfect Lou Reed album for people who don't like Lou Reed. So let's get into it. So when the Velvet Underground died, Lou decided to walk away from the music industry for a little while, and he worked as a typist in his dad's accounting firm. When he finally decided to make a solo album, called just Lou Reed, he cut the album in London with a bunch of session musicians, including Rick Wakeman, and that album was mostly made up of Velvet Underground cast-off songs. Lou didn't feel he was simpatico with the other musicians, he did not enjoy the sessions, and when the album came out, it flopped. Then something wonderful happened, in the form of David Bowie. Bowie was a massive rock star, selling millions of albums. He was a massive Lou Reed fan, and he had plenty of ideas on what Lou should do next. Lou was happy to take Bowie up on his offer to help, and David Bowie and his guitarist Mick Ronson co-produced the Transformer album. This came out in 1972, and it has a very fitting name, because Lou is transforming into something else. A Bowie-esque glam troubadour. You know, if Bowie's doing Lou, and if Lou's doing Bowie, Lou's still doing Lou. The engineer on this album was Ken Scott. Ken Scott also produced many David Bowie albums, including Hunky Dory and Ziggy Stardust. I spoke a lot about Ken Scott in my David Bowie episode, which you can reach by clicking above right now. Lou Reed played guitar, Mick Ronson played lead guitar and piano, fantastic session man Herbie Flowers played bass. He also plays tuba on this. Herbie played on David Bowie's Diamond Dogs tour. He later joined T-Rex for the Dandy in the Underworld album and tour, and he worked on this album. So, David Bowie, Lou Reed, Mark Bolan. That's a fucking resume. And the drummer on these sessions is John Halsey. You may know him as the fictional character Barry Wham, the drummer in The Ruddles. He plays drums on all the tracks with the exception of Walk on the Wild Side, which was played by Richie Dharma using brushes. The song Vicious kicks off this album. It's a killer guitar track and a great album opener. It's got that jangly guitar sound from Lou that you're going to hear on the rest of the album, but it's punctuated with a loud guitar stab on the choruses from Mick Ronson. To fill out the sound, Mick later added some strangulated guitar neck runs, and even some backward tracked guitars. Just listen to all the guitar histrionics on the outro of the song. It's mind-bending stuff. The theme of the song was suggested by Lou's old mentor, Andy Warhol, who suggested Lou write a song about someone who was vicious. Lou asked what kind of vicious, and Andy was like, "Vicious, you hit me with a flower." Now that's vicious. If you're hitting a man with a flower, let alone doing it every hour, that's so vicious. This used to be my favorite track on the album, before it was replaced by another track. I used to like to kick off my DJ sets with Vicious, because it would key people in to the kind of music they're about to hear. And after hearing that, if they came up with a stupid music request, they really wouldn't be surprised when I'd shoot them down. It was released as a single in Britain with the B-side Satellite of Love, which is a much better choice than the B-side in America, which was Goodnight Ladies. Vicious is perhaps the best example of the hybrid sound of David Bowie and Lou Reed together. It's got a little bit of that rebel rock funk under its fingernails. It's very gritty, but it also has a real bounce and a danceability to it. I really love Vicious. Up next is Andy's Chest. It's a fun song about a real-life tragic event, which was the attempted assassination of Andy Warhol by Valerie Solanas in 1968. Andy's Chest is an old Velvet Underground song. People like to say that Transformer features all new material after Lou's debut album used a bunch of Velvet Underground cast-off tracks. But Andy's Chest is an old Velvet Underground song. But there are two things to keep in mind about Andy's Chest. First off, though it was an old Velvet Underground track from 1969, the song hadn't ever been officially released yet. So if you hadn't caught the band performing it live, or on a bootleg, you still hadn't heard it. The official release of the song, on the Velvet Underground compilation VU, wouldn't come out until 1984. So it was, for all intents and purposes, a new song. Secondly, even for those of us who know the original version, the production that Bowie and Ronson do on Andy's Chest turn it into a new song. The original sounds very poppy and light. But this version has been elevated into an almost Shakespearean tragedy, and Lou is clearly getting off on the new version. You can hear it in his voice. He's having a really good time laying it down, and he turns in perhaps his best vocal performance on this entire album. Up next is the beautiful song Perfect Day. Full disclosure, this song was kind of ruined for me by Trainspotting. Don't get me wrong, the movie used the song brilliantly, but it brought a new popularity to the song. And then suddenly all these artists I hate started covering the song. So it was lost to me for a while. But it came back. It's back with me now. And Lou's version is the definitive version. One of the things I love about the song is how straightforward it is. It's a simple song, and it means what it says. According to Lou, it's about what it says it's about. Drinking sangria in the park with his love, and then going home. Feeding animals in the zoo. Then a movie too. Then home. Pretty nice little Saturday, actually. It features beautiful strings, arranged by Mick Ronson. Mick learned how to arrange from Tony Visconti when the two were working on The Man Who Sold the World. What some people might not know about Mick Ronson is that Mick was classically trained, and he played piano, violin, and a bunch of other instruments. So Ronno was way more than just a rock god, though he was that. My favorite part of the song is the outro, with Lou repeating the phrase, "You're going to reap just what you sow," while the sweet little piano run repeats and the strings surge, just as perfect as the day described in the song. Hanging Round is another story from Lou, with great lyrics and fun imagery. You know, the great rock producer Bob Ezrin once told Lou that his songs have great beginnings, but they don't really have any endings, which is why they later did the album Berlin together. But I think about Ezrin's criticism every time I hear this song, Hanging Round. It introduces such great characters and delicious details, yet you're left wanting more. The character Harry reanimated his dead father, for Christ's sakes. Jeannie and Kathy sound like fun ladies. What the hell happened to them? What did they get up to? Lou leaves you hanging. The acoustic demo even had a section about a guy named Raymond, which was left out of the finished version, probably because it was a little weird. I'm not totally sure what this song's about. Because Lou is such a great songwriter, he leaves a lot for us to interpret. But I think it's about Lou revisiting some of the characters he knew in his past, and how at the time of its writing, when Lou was about 30, some of those nighttime scenesters had not yet evolved, and were locked in the same kind of lives as when he knew them back in the 60s. Hanging Round is a very underrated song on this album. Up next is the epic Walk on the Wild Side, the song you know even if you don't know Lou Reed. The song title comes from the Nelson Algren book of the same name. Lou had read and liked the book. He had actually been approached by a couple of producers who were going to do a play based on the book, and Lou was writing the title track. Those producers later got an offer to do the movie Mahogany, and they took off. When those producers took off, Lou simply rewrote the song and populated it with some well-known characters from the Warhol Factory's nightlife world. The song name-checks Candy Darling, Jackie Curtis, Holly Woodlawn, Joe D'Alessandro, and a drug dealer named the Sugar Plum Fairy. It's got my vote for the most subversive song ever to get radio play. Thank God the old dudes at the BBC had no idea what giving head meant. I'm referring, of course, to the line, "But she never lost her head even when she was giving head." It did well on the US charts too, although they knew enough to edit out the giving head part. Walk on the Wild Side shared the Hot 100 Billboard chart with songs like I Am Woman by Helen Reddy, Summer Breeze by Seals and Crofts, and Rocky Mountain High by John Denver. That's what this was up against. There was at least one song, though, on the charts at the same time that shared a sensibility with Walk on the Wild Side, and that's Superfly by Curtis Mayfield. Talk about a 1-2 punch of gritty street culture. Suck it, Seals and Crofts. The summer breeze ain't the only thing making you feel high. Musically, in Walk on the Wild Side, there's a lot going on. Why is the bass so identifiable and so kick-ass? Because it's two basses. They're double-tracked. Herbie Flowers came up with the idea to do the main run on the stand-up bass, and then he overdubbed the electric bass in tenths so that he could fill out the sound a little more. It was the right idea for the song, and so Bowie okayed it. But Herbie suggested it because back in those days, the session musician rate was £12 for 3 hours, and if you double-tracked, it meant you got double the money. Make that money, Mr. Flowers. Anyone like me who loves Can I Kick It by A Tribe Called Quest already cherishes that bass line. The baritone saxophone solo is played by Ronnie Ross, who was the man who taught David Bowie how to play saxophone in his childhood. Walk on the Wild Side is the archetypical Lou Reed song. and he walked it like he talked it. He was the perfect artist to tell that story. He said once to David Frick, "I know I've already written my obituary," and it begins, do-do-do-do-do. The song Makeup opens up, "Your face when sleeping is divine," and then you open up your eyes. Then comes Pancake Factor #1, and the character continues putting on this massive amount of makeup. This track is perhaps the most evocative of the title Transformer, as the character applying makeup becomes a slick little girl. The tuba is played by Herbie Flowers, which adds a nice little otherworldly quality to the song. The line, "We're coming out of our closets," it's all right there. There's no math to do here. He doesn't make you work for it. Get a clue. Satellite of Love is perhaps the most gorgeous song ever written about jealousy and obsession. It's basically about someone stalking their lover because they don't trust them. I've been told that you've been bold with Harry, Mark, and John. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday with Harry, Mark, and John. This person is really stepping out. If that were an episode of Cheaters, it would have to be like an hour and a half. My main takeaway from Satellite of Love is David Bowie's background vocals. They're gorgeous. It's my pick for best background vocals ever in any song. Just Bowie's simple bong, bong, bong. That alone is genius enough. But then, for the song's outro, to have the idea to take his voice into the rafters on the end of Satellite. No, I'm not a singer. What? I hit the note. Ask your dog. The next song, Wagon Wheel, is a super fun guitar track that melds 3 disconnected fragments into a cohesive whole. It opens with the plaintive, "Won't you be my wagon wheel?" and goes on to sing about how you gotta live your life as if you're number one and to just have some fun. It's an egocentric, raucous romp. But my favorite part of the song is this quick little bridge that comes out of nowhere and totally changes the tone of the song. "Oh, Heavenly Father, what can I do? What she's done to me is making me crazy. Oh, Heavenly Father, I know I have sinned, but look where I've been. It's making me lazy." What now? That's weird. And it gets weirder the more you try to analyze it. Up next is New York Telephone Conversation. Yeah, that's the name. And it's aptly named. It's very much 2 people in New York talking on the phone. Here in the city of shows. It's Lou Reed, but he's doubled by the voice of David Bowie. I find Bowie's close harmony whisper singing on this track to be charming as hell. New York Telephone Conversation creates the same feeling in me as After Hours and I'm Sticking With You from the old Velvet Underground days. It's a sweet, charming little song, and it's almost the American equivalent of British music hall, the way it's performed. And it's a great lead-in to the next song on the album. I'm So Free is my favorite song on the album. It's got the guitar attack of Vicious, the up-tempo chug of Hangin' Round, and the good time feel of Wagon Wheel. It's a beacon of positivity on a somewhat twisted album. And I, for one, love hearing Lou sing with such joyous abandon. I'm So Free is the song I think about when someone mentions Transformer, because I think the song is a good representation of just what David Bowie unlocked in Lou on this album. The album finishes on Goodnight Ladies. It's a perfect goodbye to this album. It's otherworldly because it's got like a Dixieland band on it. It's got great lyrics. And at 11 o'clock I watch the network news. Very conversational with great lines like, "And anyway, my TV dinner's almost gone." Herbie Flowers is again on tuba, doing a great job, making some money. The track has a real Dixieland feel. Bowie called it an oompa band, but it's really more of a Dixieland feel. The choices made on how to perform Goodnight Ladies, bringing in those extra musicians, perfectly encapsulates what David Bowie and Mick Ronson brought to the party. No idea was rejected out of hand. They were up for anything. Shows you just how much fun they had making this album. This album, when it came out, it was during the Dynaflex years at RCA. You'll know them by the orange label, and the vinyl is very light. It was during the great petroleum shortage of the 70s. And so the album is very, very thin and very bendable, Dynaflex. And what's crazy about it is the Dynaflex releases sound great. So don't shy away from them if you see an original out in the stores. This is a great album. On this album, everything Lou started with the Velvet Underground's music comes to fruition. This is that promise fulfilled commercially. And it took a real Velvet Underground fan, David Bowie, to accomplish that. That is it for this week on Pop Culture Graveyard. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive on Transformer. Please feel free to leave me a comment. Let me know what your favorite Lou Reed track is. Please do me a favor and subscribe and hit that little bell. And I will see you next week with a lot more cool stuff. Good night, ladies.